The time is 2 p.m. and you're watching the Monday edition of Market View right here on Eswatini TV. My name is Notile Sitole and welcome to the program. Africa seeks to change how it connects, trades and grows. At the heart of this vision is the Single African Air Transport Market, SAATM, a flagship project of the US or the AU Agenda of 2063 designed to open Africa's skies and transform aviation into an engine for economic development and regional integration. Now, for decades, African air travel has, of course, been shaped by restrictive bilateral agreements that limit routes, kept airfares high and forced passengers and cargo to take long, indirect journeys. Now, for the kingdom, the promise of SAATM extends far beyond the runway. Open skies mean stronger air connectivity, improved access to regional and international markets, and of course, greater opportunities for trade, tourism and investment. Today, we'll get to understand how the Single African Air Transport Market Access seeks to actually break some of these barriers by liberalizing air services across the continent, allowing African airlines to fly more freely between African cities, increase frequencies and, of course, competitiveness. But first, our business news. In our business stories, we begin with this. The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg, says in the next week, government will receive the over 700 million Malangeni loan from the African Development Bank. Speaking during the Finance in Focus, the minister says suppliers will be given priority as government continues to receive funds.
We really are hoping to get our cash flow sorted out in government this period. We raised those two loans I mentioned, one from African Development Bank, $47.5 million, and one from the OPEC Fund, $50 million. The one from African Development Bank should be coming in now, which means that within the next week that money should be flowing in, should give a lot of relief to the government cash flow system. December normally is a better tax month, so normally we raise about $500 million more in tax in December. That's going to add relief too. First week of January, SACA receipts money comes in, again adding a bit of relief, and then the OPEC fund payment should be coming in January sometime. And between all of these, we absolutely foresee that we're going to be able to settle suppliers 100% and really get the cash flow of the government back on track as it should be. And so things are on track there, and we believe that things should be in a much better position in about a month's time. At the same time, news on our revenue officers. So this time of the year, there's a lot of pressure on revenue officers. As I might have mentioned before, we are planning on shutting down the government revenue offices and transferring that to be under ERS. ERS is taking over the function of revenue officers. ERS has made a deal with EPTC to use the post offices as revenue officers. So at the moment, we are in that transition phase where some of the post offices are opening up on a constant basis to be able to accommodate people paying revenue things. We are still having some glitches. We heard of someone having paid something at the post office and the receipt not being recognized where they needed to recognize the receipt. These are all teething problems which are being sorted out. That problem has been sorted out. But what we can announce, and that is that so far the Manzini post office and the Mabane post office are both open for business, and anyone paying revenue things can go and also pay now at those two post offices. There's a rollout of post offices opening up for revenue work, and we'll continue announcing on a weekly basis which ones do that. And then when the post offices are fully on top of this and it's working well, we'll systematically start shutting down the old revenue offices, as we believe it'll be a lot more accessible to people, really decentralizing this work of revenue officers and really making sure that we can add to the speed of it. At the same time, we're moving more and more onto digital payments, so those people that can pay digitally should be able to more and more not need to actually even go stand in a queue. You can actually do this from your cell phone or from your laptop or from a device to be able to make these payments to government. And so that's a process that is constantly ongoing, and we believe in a few months' time we'll have transitioned from where we are now to where we plan to be with this new transition.
In other news, the European Union has provided funding to the support to air transport sector Development SATSD program with 8 million euros, amounting to approximately 160 million emalangeni. The support is aimed at advancing the operationalization of the single African air transport market. This was shared by Zakaria Kingori, senior transport economist at COMESA, who was representing Dr. Bernard Zawanda, Director of Infrastructure and Logistics at COMESA, during the technical assistance workshop on the implementation of the concrete measures of the single African air transport market held at the Sibaini Lodge in Matapa.
I'm proud to share some of the tangible steps COMESA has taken as part of its commitment to this agenda. Firstly, on model bilateral air services agreement, that is BASAS. This year, COMESA completed the development of a model BASA that conforms with the provisions of the YD. It is worth noting that the first consultative workshop on this model BASA was appropriately held right here in Eswatini. On regulatory capacity building, COMESA has also conducted a capacity building workshop focused on the critical YD regulatory texts, that is Annex 3 on dispute settlement mechanism, Annex 5 on competition regulations, and Annex 6 on consumer protection regulations. Then thirdly, we have supported our partner legs. We supported the East African Community, one of the implementing legs, in drafting air transport liberalization regulations and regulations to domesticate the YD annexes 3, 5, and 6, among other activities.
Principal Civil Aviation Officer at East African Community, on behalf of the Secretary General Veronica, says they are committed to the operationalization of the single African air transport market.
Of SATAM is to leverage aviation to connect Africa and boost the trade and the tourism within the continent. This involves creating a single market for air transport by removing restrictions and liberalizing tariffs, frequency, and capacity. The East African Community, as a regional economic community for Eastern Africa, coordinate and facilitate the implementation of SATAM through the partner state and working with continental bodies like African Civil Aviation Commission, AFCAC, in achieving the AU Agenda 23 flagship project of a single and a unified air transport market.
The Director of International Trade, Lungile Dlamini, outlines some of the efforts already taken by Eswatini.
As the host, it is important that I outline the steps Eswatini has already undertaken on this journey. Firstly is accession to SATAM. Eswatini is proud to be one of the 15 SATAM states in the Eastern and Southern Africa and Indian Ocean region that have made the solemn commitment to liberalize our air transport market. Secondly is on the establishment of national implementation structures. We have constituted a national implementation committee involving key government institutions, our civil aviation authority, and other relevant stakeholders. This ensures coordinated progress on the 8 concrete measures. Thirdly is on the regulatory alignment efforts. Eswatini has begun reviewing and aligning its aviation policies and regulations with continental requirements, including those contained in Annex 3 on dispute settlement, Annex 5 on competition, and Annexes on consumer protection. These efforts reinforce our legal preparedness to implement SATAM. Fourthly is on the improvements in infrastructure and navigation. At King Mswati, the third international airport, notable work has been done to enhance air navigation services, improve safety oversight, and maintain international standards, ensuring that Eswatini is ready to host growing regional and continental traffic. Fifthly is on the active participation in regional and continental processes.
According to COMESA, the Single African Air Transport Market is a flagship initiative of the African Union's Agenda 2063, which was launched in 2018 to liberalize air transport across Africa through full implementation of the 1999 Yamoussoukro decision. COMESA plays a key role in advancing this initiative by promoting open skies, enhanced connectivity, and regional integration among its member states. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Vuminkosi Nzinisa, Matapa.
And with the latest just in, the Central Statistics Office has reported that the headline inflation rate last month, compared with that of November last year for the country, is 2.4%. The Consumer Price Index (CPI) report released today states that this inflation rate is 0.5 percentage points lower than the 2.9% observed in October this year. The report states that the 2.4% observed in November of 2025 is 1.3 percentage points lower than the inflation rate of 3.7% observed in November of 2024. Last month, the inflation rate for goods was at 2.5% and for services is rather at 2.4%. Now, the month-on-month inflation rate, that is the percentage change in the Consumer Price Index for November 2025 compared with that of October 2025, is 0.0%. This inflation rate is 0.34 percentage points lower than the inflation rate of 0.4% observed in October of 2025. And that is your business brief this afternoon. We'll take a break. Market View continues after this.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Welcome back. You are still watching Market View, and moving on to this. Today, stakeholders convened for a technical workshop led by COMESA focusing on the implementation of the Single African Air Transport Market. The engagement centered on how Africa's open skies agenda can be made possible with, of course, attention on air connectivity, regulatory alignment and economic opportunities for member states. To help us understand what this means for Eswatini's aviation landscape, we are now joined by Darius Hlophe, the Eswatini Civil Aviation Authority's Air Transport Manager. A very good afternoon to you, Hlophe, and thank you very much for your time. You're coming to us virtually, actually, and we'll just kick it off here. Let's unpack the SAATM or SATMA, what it is and why it matters now.
Okay, thank you, Notside, for having me today, and greeting to all the Maswati watching this channel today. Actually, I think if I want to explain the SATM, I think I have to start back when the African ministers responsible for air transport met in Côte d'Ivoire. They met in Yamoussoukro, a town that is in Côte d'Ivoire, on the 13th to 14th November 1999, where they were asking themselves questions to say, how can we promote flying in Africa? So their objective was mainly to harmonize the air transport policies in order to eliminate non-physical barriers. And secondly, it was actually meant to create an environment for the provision of safe, reliable, and affordable air transport and services necessary for the free movement of goods and services. Yes, then from that meeting they had, then AFCAC, which is actually the organ in Africa that is actually responsible for aviation, we call it the African Civil Aviation Commission. They then sat down and came up with a project which is now called SATAM. This SATAM is mainly to implement the Yamoussoukro decision that was taken from the town called Yamoussoukro. Its main aim is to actually create a singly unified market for air transport. That is actually in short form is to liberalize the air traveling in Africa. So from that time, there were member states were encouraged to say they have to all sign towards actually committing themselves to actually implement the SATAM, which is the singly African air transport market. So member states signed, and now we're here today to actually get capacity to say how are we going to actually make sure that all member states actually understands what are the objectives of SATAM, so that we can actually promote the liberalization of a transport market in Africa.
And we're here now, we're looking at SATAM as an instrument to promote trade and interconnectivity across the African continent. Let's bring it closer to home. What are some of the opportunities that SATAM presents for our aviation sector as a kingdom and, of course, our economy?
Okay, thank you very much, Notile. I think once we actually committed to implementation of SATAM, we are actually having a program that is called the signing of bilateral air service agreements. So these bilateral air service agreements are ensuring that we have a sort of a partnership with each African state, where we're saying it's a roadmap, or it's a commitment to say now airlines can start negotiating rules between the states. So the benefits are huge, Notile, in terms of actually benefiting the economy. One, we're going to see more connectivity in Africa, which is intra-Africa connection. Then we're going to see the fares are going to come down. Once we've got more connectivity, we've got more players in the industry, we've got more airlines, we're going to see the fares going down. And when the fares go down economically, we are going to have a demand for air transport. People are going to be able to travel within Africa. And the traveling is not mainly looking at on the passenger side, even the goods and other services, because we're saying this SATAM is actually a flagship project, which is one of the projects that we actually launched under AU. You know that we've got the continental trade market. So even once we have got the liberalized market, we are going to be able to have goods move from each African state to actually reach wherever destination. That's where the goods are going to be used. So right now, Eswatini is going to benefit immensely in terms of now we're going to see even airlines are going to be actually interested to say now that we are part of SATAM, then let's come and establish our airlines in Eswatini to benefit the entire economy. Even employment is going to benefit. We may count the way the economy is going to benefit through the implementation of the SATAM.
One of the benefits you mentioned was more connectivity, and as a continent, with regards to connectivity is us reaching each other in terms of trade. And we're now bringing in the subject of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. How do you see SATAM complementing this free trade area, and what do you think the role that can be played by the aviation industry is? And as a country, actually, how can we position ourselves in that regard?
Okay, thank you very much. Look, right now, Eswatini is a landlocked country, so there is no way you can move goods and services either than using the aviation, because aviation can take the goods from here to the final destination. So once we actually signed all this agreement that I'm talking about, we are going to see free movement of goods, the ease of movement of goods from Eswatini to the final destination. And the country is actually trying to make sure that, because we've got our King Mswati III, where we currently have a cargo facility that is actually it's actually accommodating 5,000 kg per year. So Eswaka is actually trying some means to actually attract investors to increase that capacity so that we can take advantage of the continental trade market through transporting of goods and services to every destination in Africa.
Right. Darius, we'll leave you here for today. Thank you very much for your time. That was Darius Hlope, who is the Air Transport Manager at the Eswatini Civil Aviation Authority, unpacking to us the single African air transport market. The show continues after this. We're back with our in-house economist, Anele Sibia. Stay tuned.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you'll go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. Now for our market analysis segment, in-house economist Anele Sibia joins me in the studio. Mr. Sibia, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm all right, Notslet. Thank you. Yourself?
Good, good. So futures do appear to be rising after a sharp technology route. Is this a technical bounce or a sign that investors are now buying the dip?
I think it's more an issue of a consolidation, buying the dip, in the sense that what we are still looking into right now is what are the impacts of this interest rate cut going to be on the economy, while at the same time, in as much as we have seen that, the interest rate going down, but there still are those fears around overvaluations in terms of those tech stocks. And if you look into the Asian trading day, it's more telling of that story, the fact that, investors, more especially the hedgers, are still a bit skeptical about going back into those tech stocks. And you'd see the carnage that's happening on walls in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and also in Shanghai. So it's quite telling of that. So the US story is kind of a bit different because it is largely backed by expectations of the November jobs data, which was delayed. So that's going to actually inform whether we're going to see another interest rate cut or we are going to see another pause. But it doesn't really talk to the fundamentals in terms of when are we going to see the techs starting to give out money in terms of that AI stock. So if you look at what's happening in the US, so we closed the markets on the red on Friday, with just the futures showing a bit of a rebound, largely being pushed by the fact that we are moving closer towards those job numbers, which have been delayed for over 2 months right now, for 7 months. So markets have been really flying blind. So the fact that we have those numbers coming in is somehow, giving back some confidence in the markets. But in terms of whether we're seeing the techs, you can see that on Friday there was a 398 point loss within the tech space there, mostly when you look at the Nasdaq, which traces those tech stocks. And if you look at the fact that the Nasdaq really is struggling to get to the 24,000 mark, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average is back on that 48,000, and the S&P 500 as well is just moving slightly closer to those records of 6,900. And probably if we get good numbers coming out of those jobs, the jobs data, we should see the Nasdaq cross over to the 7,000s in the new year. And then when we move on to Europe, London is holding a bit steady. So is Germany, and so is France. So what we have been waiting for on within the UK markets is basically to see what the Bank of England is going to say around interest rates with their meeting this week, and we're expecting a decision. We do expect them to hold steady because inflation within the UK economy is still about at 3.6% for the previous month, way above that 2% target range. So we just are waiting to see what's going to happen there. But overall growth figures, the resilience within the Euro economy, the European economy, that's what just supporting the growth and the confidence in Japan, Germany, and also in France as well. And then moving across the pond, when you get to Asia, that's where the tech fears are more apparent. That's where you're seeing a lot of the tech fears coming into play. When you look at the fact that the Nikkei in Tokyo there is just steady on that 50,000 mark, but when you climb down to Hong Kong and also to Shanghai, what you're seeing there is a signs of losses, and the news have it that it's mostly when you look at what is happening within those tech stocks as that were being used as a hedge. So we're seeing the hedge funders really just dropping tech as one of the go-to stocks because they'd made a lot of bets around that, and the Asian market was the first to feel that. So we're going to see if that is going to roll over into the US economy on opening bells, say in the next hour or so. And then coming into South Africa, what we have there is a rally that's largely driven by gold. We are back on that 113,000 mark. We just a bit higher there, closer to 113.4 earlier on in the day, but we just seeing a bit of a downward revision in the numbers, largely driven by the fact that gold is really doing very well. And then when you move on to Eswatini, we haven't seen any change. And then the currencies, we'll start with the commodities. Gold heading back to that 44,000 mark. You should have bought the couple of weeks ago. And then Brent crude there, because of those Russia-Ukraine talks, we're seeing Brent crude coming down, because if they get closer to a deal, that might mean we're bringing back the Russian oil into the markets. That's an oversupply issue. And then in terms of the currencies, because of the gold story, and while markets are still waiting to see what's happening in terms of the bond yields and in terms of other trades in the US, the Lilangen is relatively strong against the dollar, the euro, and just a tad bit weaker against the Japanese yen. Thank you.
Mr. Sibia, thank you very much for that analysis. That was in-house economist Anele Sibia helping us understand what's making the day's trade. Otherwise, this has been Market View. Thank you very much for your company. Until the next edition, take care.